Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. We've got a terrific show lined up tonight. We're going to take another look at some famous ghost photos throughout history. But before we start, let's take a quick spin around the room and introduce ourselves, as it were. Let's start with you. C, tell us who you are.
Hey, C. Michael Lanning, independent artist. Done work for Hazard Productions and the upcoming Magi's Grace with J.D. Calderon. Plus, host a little show on Indie Comics Network called Art Style Kamikaze coming back in the spring. So
nice. Welcome back, brother. Glad to have you as always. This is going to be a good one. Hey, you guys know Chris from last week. Chris, introduce yourselves to the viewers.
Hello, I am Chris Hall, colorist, comic colorist of 18 years. I currently have joined Exile Studios, and we're producing a bunch of different content to put out to a bunch of different platforms. And I also work with Glasshouse Productions and HCMP Productions as well. So
nice. Hey, welcome. Thanks for helping us do this.
Yeah, a pleasure to be here.
Okay, Anthony, good to see you as always. It's been a little bit for you and I. Tell us who you are.
My name is Anthony Castro, creator and writer of Bad Wabbit. Basically, it's a post-apocalyptic, dystopian, anthropomorphic jumble of awesomeness. And you guys can find it at dnwcomics.com. And I'm so glad to be here. Anything paranormal, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah. This is going to be a good one, man. I'm not going to waste too much time. Let's dive right into the questions. This is the Chinnery backseat driver from 1959. Now, the thing that's kind of trippy about this one, and C. Michael Lanning knows what I'm going to say. In 1959, this wasn't quite a thing yet to be faking film for any kind of ghost sighting notoriety. It was this elderly couple who had visited a cemetery, and the husband was sitting in the car. The wife takes a shot of the husband, and of course you can see the ghost sitting behind the husband with the glowing eyes.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah, and that's supposedly supposed to look just like her brother, right? The lady's brother. So, C. Michael Lanning, what do you make of this one? First off, technical, is it an overexposure, anything like that?
No, I think somebody's there because I don't. Is that glowing eyes? Because I took it as glasses.
Me too.
Well, right. Yeah, it is glasses. I guess I should be less terrifying. I always go right to this satanic influence.
No, I've heard about this. Is that her brother? That's supposed to be her brother?
It was her mother. She said.
Yeah, I was going to say. I heard that it was supposed to be her mother.
Mother, right? Yeah, this one. The bad thing about this kind of stuff is that's a very clear picture. There is somebody back there. This is not an overexposure. This is not a trick of the light. There's somebody there. It's not what do we call it, the face splatia or whatever. There's somebody there, and we kind of have to take the word. The only thing I can say is what gives them a little bit of credibility, as far as not just having to take their word from it. If you're looking at this, she sure is close. Like he looks like he's almost on her lap.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like.
I will agree with you there. It does look a little bit more like a solid creature, more so than some kind of spirit. Like it looks like there's some solidity to that figure. Chris, what do you make of this? Do you think that that's the spirit of the dead mother? Is it a prank? What are we seeing here?
It definitely looks like a solid flesh and blood person, and I have to agree with Allison. Spirit photography does go back quite a ways, even prior to the 1950s. Of course, you always have to say, what reason would they have to say, "Oh, there was no one there"? That's got to be a ghost. So.
Yeah. Right. We talked about this earlier, and one of the things that. How do I want to say this? Starting next week, I'm going to start to talk about some of the known hoaxes as well. Because what I'm learning is you start to learn about these. Some of these we find have already been debunked. And there's different levels of debunking, but some are pretty certain. I'll tell you, one like this is kind of vague to me, and I'll tell you why. Again, first of all, 1959, if it is a photographic trick, it would have required time and the chemicals, which people wouldn't have had laying around the house. The second thing, what these people are in their 50s, their 60s. What are they? They're not
logically inclined enough to do such a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
My mom can't reprogram her phone, so I can't imagine.
Right. Anthony,
know?
what do you make of this one? Like I say, it could go either way. I mean, maybe it is some kind of prank. What do you think it is?
Now, me personally, I wholeheartedly believe in spirits, ghosts, and all that stuff. But I'm also a skeptic believer. I'm not one of those people that just out of pocket assume it's like absolutely.
Be a little bit more specific, Anthony. A skeptic believer.
Okay,
I want to know what that is. What does that mean exactly?
So I'm one of those people that don't immediately assume everything is that someone presents as a ghost or spirit is a ghost or spirit. There has to be some kind of validity to it. And what I'm seeing in that picture, like you guys all said, it does look like someone is actually sitting there. Why they would go ahead and say that it was someone else or a ghost or something, I don't know. But to me, it looks like there's somebody actually sitting in the back seat.
Okay. Before we go to the final word on this, let's just take a quick detour. We talked a couple of weeks ago about how people that are experiencing grief, they can sometimes manifest these things psychologically. There's nothing wrong with it. It's one of the things about mental health. Is there any element in this case where, how do I want to say this? Could the grieving daughter's behavior be willing it into the energy into the photo? Is that possible?
I mean, I guess if they're going to go with ghosts, it's as plausible, right? I mean, in all honesty,
maybe more plausible.
Yeah. The thing about this, however, is I guess I'm looking at the lighting, right? Because you see the lighting on his face, and it doesn't really hit the same way in the back seat, but I guess that would make sense if she's sitting all the way
in the back seat,
right?
And there's a little bit of light coming off the glasses.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe they're glowing eyes. Maybe. Chris,
I'm going to go to you. Do you think that there's any element of, and look, if you think this is crazy, say so, but I kind of like the idea of this psychological transference, particularly when it's one of the violent emotions like grief. Do you think something like that is possible in this case?
I'm typically, very skeptical about ghosts. But, I do kind of believe in manifesting, negative emotions and negative energy and stuff like that. So it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
And I mean, has anybody delved into this just being a trick of lighting? I don't know.
Yeah.
Pareidolia.
Well, when you talk about pareidolia, when you talk about manifesting things due to emotions and all that, it goes back to the poltergeist phenomenon. People talk about the poltergeists being manifested through someone living's emotions and how those emotions and what they're feeling and all that can actually manifest activity in the physical world.
Right. We talked about it 2 weeks ago. We sometimes called it the psychic ether theory, they call it, which it works on a couple of things. Number one, if it's a violent emotion, like a crime or something was committed, that's where sometimes people claim they can see ghosts later. Or if it's an area where there was some kind of grief, which, by the way, that explains a lot why so many sightings are around battlefields, because it has both of those things.
Right.
Very good point.
If you look at it, there's a clearer picture. I think somebody brightened it up. And it still have the problem where right here over his shoulder, there should be some signs of the seat. But I don't see that.
Oh, right. It
almost the way it runs.
It almost looks like a reflection in the glass more so than he's sitting back there.
Right.
I never thought of that.
And
hold on, I'm getting into the analysis. So we know. There we go. Let's get with Allison here. Sorry, Allison, I got behind on the comments.
Yeah.
Well, and whenever we talk about these things and the history of the photos, the first thing we should all admit up front, most people are sketchy. So let's just assume that everyone involved is a liar.
Well, at this point in time, also, there's ways to figure this out because if this was a photograph, these people were alive, still talking about this when things were in color. So surely somebody took this photograph and examined it.
Well, and in my case, and then I tell you what, in this one, I'll take the final word. The thing is, when these things are hoaxes, you know what I'm going to say. Why? Why would somebody go through all the time and trouble of staging an elaborate ghost sighting hoax, especially in 1959 when there was no internet, there was no TV, you weren't getting on the cover of Ghost Sighting magazine. It wasn't a thing back then. So you got to, and by the way, and I admit there's many cases when we look at modern stuff where the people were in magazines or they were social media. Those we can be a little bit more skeptical of.
Yeah.
I think the further up the timeline towards our modern day, the more skeptical I am about whatever photos are taken. The further back you go, the more credible I believe they are, because we didn't have the technology and knowledge to do that kind of stuff. So that's why we were talking about the brown lady or whatever. That's why I said, that's probably one of the most credible.
Some of these, Allie, that we're
images.
going to look at, that's a great point. I try to stick with pre-tabloid accounts because that's correct. The tabloid started becoming a thing as early as the 70s, really, right? Mm-hmm. When you talk about the Star and the
yeah.
But like a case like this is a great example. Let's circle around. This is the Andrews baby ghost photo. That's 1947, which is allegedly this baby died, and this is the grave, right? So the first thing is it a double exposure? Is that a technical thing? See, Michael Lanning, you take off.
I do not think this is a photo of a ghost. No. I'm going to put that out there right now. Because if you do look at that picture, that looks like a posed picture of I know this is 1947, but who knows? A Sears photograph. It's I feel like, if this is not double exposure, accidentally mixing films with somebody else's when they get it developed, somebody's messing with her. Yeah. Because she says it's not her child. The ghost is not her child. So I think somebody took, either they're messing with her or this is a complete accident. This one I don't believe is a ghost. That's a little too clear for me. I know that's crazy to say. It's like, ghost photos, if they get away with it.
So you'd be one. You'd be. Let me see if I can encapsulate your thoughts. You'd be more inclined to believe this one if it was blurrier.
Well, that and the fact that if the baby didn't look like they were looking at the camera and posing for it.
It does look sort of posed. I'm going to give you that. Chris, what do you have to say about the Andrews baby ghost photo? I think C's right about the posing. I mean, first off, do you think there's a technical element here, like a, double exposure or something like that?
Well, and not to mention giant baby arm. So
that is really a whopper.
Okay, so I did a little bit of research into this picture, and from what I could gather on Google, so the most popular camera around this time was like the Kodak Brownie.
Oh, sure, I remember those.
A very basic camera, which were actually very, very prone to double exposures, because if you didn't slide the film forward manually and you just took another picture, you'd get a double exposure. So given that the camera that could have taken this picture is very, very prone to double exposures, I would have to say that's probably it.
Okay. So we got one vote for some technical foul. Go ahead, chime in.
Well, the only thing I could say about that, though, is because she notices it's not her child, but she didn't say she recognized the child. So I feel like if that was the case, it was on the same photo, she would recognize the child, right?
I'm not sure if that makes it more or less likely. Let's hear from Anthony. The Andrews baby ghost photo.
I'm not buying it. I think it is double exposure of some sort. And the fact that she omitted the information about knowing who the child was doesn't, she could know that's not her child, but she could have known the child, but she didn't say anything about it, and I honestly, just looking at it, I think that it's double exposure for sure.
Okay, so out of all these examples, it sounds like we agree that this one, it looks the fakest in the sense that it looks staged. Yeah. And there's something not quite right about that arm. I think we agree on that. But hey, I got to ask the question, right? And let's take a quick spin around the room on this one. So the other thing about this image, and we're going to see a couple that are sort of disturbing, right? Out of all the pranks that you could play, out of all the hoaxes, who chooses this, right? Let's say it is a double exposure. Let's give the person the benefit of the doubt and say they made it accidentally. Here's what I mean by that. Oh, I was trying to make a funny Christmas card, and instead I got a baby in white sitting on a grave. Let's be honest, it's grim. It's grim.
Don't send that to the grandparents.
So I'm going to ask the question, the $1 million question. Start with C. Michael Lanning. C. Michael Lanning, why?
I totally think somebody was screwing with her. I do. I don't think that I don't think she knows. I think she believes that there was something, but I think somebody's screwing with her. I think you take it back to Kodak or whoever it was at that point in time and say, hey, look, somebody's screwing around with photos. I mean, if you could do at that time, if you could do two of the same person on screen, you could do something like this. I really think this is a hoax.
Well, it goes back to Abraham Lincoln. There was a guy.
Chime in.
There was a guy that used to put Abraham Lincoln in photos of his wife to make her think that she was actually, being visited by the ghost of her husband. And if you could do that back then, and then you could do it now, and you could certainly have done it in the 1950s and in the 40s. Right. It's not far-fetched to say that someone took that, did it intentionally, showed her the video or the picture, and said, "Look, I got a picture of this kid on your kid's grave." And she was like, "I don't know who that kid is, but cool."
It goes out in the world, and everybody sees your work, and you're just sitting over there snickering, you little prankster.
Yeah.
That's some pretty good stuff. So I think the final word there is that one. None of us are believers in the Andrews baby ghost photo.
Yeah.
The next one I got is something a little bit more interesting, or at least I thought it was, and I want to get you guys' opinions here. This is what they call the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery photo, and this is allegedly a haunted place to begin with. And here's what allegedly happened. You got the ghost researchers there looking for this phantom farmhouse. Yeah, there's all kind of nonsense in this place. And they snap a photo because their instruments start acting up. When they look at the photos later, you can see there's this woman, and she kind of looks like she might be wearing clothes that are from another time, right? C. Michael Lanning, what do you make of the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery photo?
To be completely honest with you, it's this one. I have a hard time believing. I have to believe the story of the people more than I can believe this photo, because to me, this photo looks like somebody's just sitting there. Yeah, there's nothing. You can't see.
All the witnesses said, allegedly all the witnesses said there was nobody there. It was just the instruments. We felt a weird presence, and we took a photo, and that's what we got.
Right. Yeah. That again, this has to be dependent on the character of the people who are witnessing, really, and even that. Who knows? Maybe they were just snapping pictures around, and she moved behind a tree. That kind of thing. It's maybe it could be a ghost. Who knows? But to me, it looks like somebody's just sitting there.
Yeah. Well, that's the easy explanation, but of course, the people that are there, so they say the opposite. Chris, what do you make of the Bachelor's Grove photo?
Well, okay.
If you notice, when you look close at the photo, we're sort of overlooking that the woman is sort of, as it goes down to her legs, she's sort of diaphanous in the photo, right? You can see through her just a little bit in the original photo.
Very true. So all these photos that I know we're going to be going over, I always take them into Photoshop because there's a little trick that you can do. You can adjust with the saturation and all that stuff, and you can tell kind of there's telltale signs that something has been added afterwards.
Yeah.
To the photo.
Right.
And this one does have some of those artifacts. And let me just add that Photoshop came out the year before this photo was taken. And
that's it. Case sealed.
This was a ghost hunting team, right, Tim? You said
right.
Well, yeah, hear him out, because there's one more interesting point, which maybe I'll just drop it now, which is this is a case where, I'm sorry to say this, but they were ghost researchers. They were already, they were there to try to find something. So to me, that almost makes them less credible. I guess this is my version of C. Michael Lanning's answer, where he would have believed the other one if it was more blurry. I might have believed this one if they weren't there trying to catch this phantom farmhouse.
Right, yeah.
Because, by the way, this place has a couple of ghosts. If you ever have a chance to read up on it, it's called Bachelor's Grove. And it's got like this phantom house. It's got this black dog. It's got this lady in white. And by the way, this lady in white, this is not even the one that we're seeing here.
Yeah.
So, I believe all the explanations, especially the one that Chris gave. I think that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, you got to look at the credibility of the group itself, because I mean, if you're there trying to find ghosts and you don't find one, you don't want to come back with nothing.
Right,
so you're like, well, we got this, and of course back then, I don't think they probably had the technology on Photoshop to see that. I think that's something that came along a little bit later, to see the things he's talking about.
Right. It took a little bit longer to snoop it out. Yeah, I got what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that maybe this is something they put together just to kind of give themselves and their group a little credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think so. I think this is. I feel like you could have taken an old picture of somebody sitting in a speakeasy and clipped them out and stuck them in there. And look, it's somebody. This one's hard for me to believe. The only thing.
Oh, go ahead. Did Zach Baggins take this picture?
Not before. Not until after he cussed at her for a couple of.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're probably too busy running around screaming.
Yeah.
So this one's got a couple of things going against it, and this is you tell me if I got it right. Which first, it's comes out the year Photoshop is invented, so there's one strike.
Mm-hmm.
The second strike, it was found by ghost researchers, and the third is it looks more like a photo of a person more so than it's not too ghostly.
Yeah.
Right? Did I cover all the things?
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
I will say this much, however, they were clever in what they did because the lighting is right, huh?
Mm-hmm.
When you put it in the Photoshop and you adjusted the contrast, did the lighting go a different way, or was all the lighting the same?
So you basically get artifacts around whatever has been added afterwards.
Yeah.
It gets all pixely artifacts.
Yeah.
And that's not always telling, but that shows that there very well could have been added. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because the lighting looks right, huh? I mean, it looks like it would be coming, like she's kind of like in an open area of trees. That's I'll say if they did Photoshop it, I feel like they got a good
they did a good job.
They did a good job of it. Only thing is, do ghosts cast shadows? Because her legs are casting shadows on what she's sitting on.
Well, see, that's tricky because you hear about people saying, "Oh, I saw a shadow," on the
Yeah,
wall, but
maybe.
you don't see anybody there. But then they
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I saw somebody," but they didn't have a shadow.
Well, when we did the show with Aaron Humphreys, he pointed that out. Then a couple of the examples that could have been bad photoshops, like in one, the hand was the wrong way and the shadow was going the wrong way, and the other. So there are some kind of telltale signs. But I'm of the belief that, how do I want to say this? It seems like this one we've already debunked.
Yeah.
That said, I'm not sure how comfortable I am saying, well, all you people with the eyewitness account, you're all liars. Because it's easy to say everybody's lying all the time then. And the truth is, sometimes weird stuff happens. Sometimes
I can honestly tell you, like I said, I'm a skeptical believer, and I believe wholeheartedly in spirits because I grew up in a house that was extraordinarily, paranormal activity was abound there. And
give us for instance, Anthony. Give us like you talked about having some paranormal experiences.
My very first notable paranormal experience, I was probably about 10 years old. We moved into this house. It was our first house. And when we first moved in, we were putting stuff in the attic, and there was a cage up there. Now, this was a cage probably big enough to put a Great Dane in. And it had a bowl and a spoon in the cage. Very, very odd. And we ended up having to take it apart to get it out of the attic. And shortly thereafter, things kind of started going weird around the house. Doors would open and close by themselves. You would hear people talking in rooms where nobody was. And my first real, knowing, I'm so confident that there are ghosts that you can't. It would be like trying to tell me sharks don't swim in the ocean. I know. So I woke up. I was like 10 years old, laying in my room. Of course, I had my nightlight on, and I felt like I was being watched. I was laying on my stomach, and I felt like somebody was in my room all of a sudden. I rolled over, and at the end of my bed, there was a woman standing there. And at first, I thought it was my mother because I'm half asleep. I'm like, why is my mom in my room? What is she doing? But then I realized I could see my nightlight through her legs. And I freaked, as any kid would. She had a deadpan face. It wasn't like malicious or anything. It was just kind of no emotion. And I pulled my blankets up over my head. It was probably about a good 30 seconds. And then I pulled my blankets back down. She was gone. And I bolted out my room in a full on panic to my mom and my dad. And that was like one of the first real experiences that we had in that house. But I mean, there were so many things that happened in that house. My dad woke up to a shadow person standing over him. And my dad's a Marine, so he woke up swinging. And when he swung, he said his fist went right through the shadow and it just kind of dissipated. And me and my mom were in the living room, and we remember him coming out going, "Where is he? Where is he?" And he was freaking out. And my wife, back when we first started dating, hated coming to our house because something always happened. We were sitting on the couch watching TV, and you could hear little kids laughing in the house. I know, little kids could have been outside playing or something, but it was too inside. And we searched the house. There was nobody. We didn't even have kids in the house. And so, I mean, I've had my friends sit there and we watched a full body apparition walk across the living room right in front of us.
I got to get a baseline. Anthony, I love these stories. So you believe wholeheartedly in ghosts.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So we had asked a couple of questions, and I want to see if you agree with one or maybe both of these. The first was that ghosts are potentially the spirits of deceased persons. That's choice number one. Number two is that a ghost is actually some kind of, like a phantasm put there by the emotional heaviness of either a crime or a grief, something along the mental like a dimensional type thing.
Yeah.
Where do you think a ghost lands on those two
I think
choices?
it could be either one. I
Little
think,
both.
honestly, I think a little bit of both, depending on the situation. You have your residual haunts, which is, if you come into the same place 30 years in a row and you take off your boots in the same place and you go up the stairs at the same time every day for 30 years and then you pass, it's very possible that that energy carries over. And one day at that exact same time, at that exact same day or whatever, someone could possibly see your spirit coming
Right.
in, taking your boots off, and walking up the
You
stairs,
could have potentially left an imprint,
kind of like a
like
tape.
any place you ever might have cried, for example.
Yeah,
You might have left an imprint that could be then read by somebody down
yeah.
the line.
It's like, for example, my my buddy had passed away. He was one of my best friends, and like it's not one of those residual things, but it could have definitely been caused by some of my emotions. He passed away, and I woke up out of a dead sleep, and he was standing there in my house, and he said, "Just to let you know, I'm okay. I'm okay." And I remember just my wife woke up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I started crying because it was just so emotional. Like he was like a father figure to me, and this is like 2 days after he passed, and but I saw him physically standing there, and just like that, he was gone. It was like almost like a blip, when you see the Fight Club and Tyler Durden flashes in and out.
Yeah.
He flashed out just like that. Like
Yeah.
he came in, said, "Hey, this and this and that," and then bloop, it was gone. But I guess it could be caused by anything. I think an emotional surge, maybe just it's hard to say because it's so untapped, the knowledge of what manifests these things and what causes these kind of things. So it could be anything. So I don't mark it off as like, oh, it can only be this thing and it can only happen because of this. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely a connection between like the grief that you described and these
mhm.
moments of emotional heaviness. This is a great example here, right? This is our number 10. That's the worsted church ghost photo. Now this is from 1975. So again, that's very early to be faking something. We'll start out with the technical aspects, right? In this case, you can see you got some kind of light. It looks like the light is coming in correctly, does it?
Mhm.
See, what do you have to say about the lighting in the worsted church?
Yeah, it looks like the lighting's right. I mean, it would be hitting that person on the back there on their back pew, uh, at a certain angle, and then the blur. Because if you look on the left hand side of the photo at the flowers that are back there,
Mm-hmm.
they look a little blurry, right? I mean,
They
does
do.
anybody
They
else see
do.
that
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the other ones?
I do. I
So
see it.
there looks like there's a malfunction or a something here on this side right there that could be blurring that, right? Maybe she's radiating some kind of light if it's a ghost that is you know, well, she did actually, but to answer Allison's thing, she did, but they think that there was a way that that person could have found the word. That's what it was. But here, I think this could be somebody sitting there and something in the film. It's because that looks like a person to me. That looks like a person who's looking up behind her. And if you're just taking a picture of that one person, you might not even really. At this point in time, you're not getting unless it's a Polaroid. You're not getting an
Well, and
instant
the
photo,
reason
right?
why I find this one to be a little interesting, again, allegedly, the reason why this church is sort of notorious to begin with is because there was this case in the 1800s where there was a ghost sighting, and supposedly somebody slept there all night and saw this figure in white. So here this goon goes in here to take a photo, and doesn't he seemingly capture this?
That was his goal was to capture the ghost in
No,
white,
no.
or
The person
okay,
who took the photo didn't know about it, but it kind
okay,
of
okay,
kind of bolsters the theory.
okay. Uh, yeah, but I mean, it's um, Yeah, see, that word's kind of
Yeah, it's kind of a generic word too to find the afterlife. They're trying to contact Santa Claus, maybe.
Yeah, something, right? But again, that person looks like an elderly woman, right? Looking in to pray. And just because she's wearing white, I mean, was this before or after Lent? That's all I'm at, that's So I don't think knowing older women all my life, white was kind of a common color, right? It's not really something, at this point in time in the 1970s, there are not really many goth old women running around.
And everybody knows that ghosts don't follow Labor Day rules. They wear white whenever the hell they want. Yeah.
Whenever they want.
Chris, what do you make of the worsted church? To me, the figure isn't quite sitting on the pew correctly, for one thing. What's your take on that?
So I'm guilty of taking this into Photoshop again. And I zoomed in.
I think that's great.
If you zoom in on this photo, I'm sorry, but to my eye, it looks like a dude in a bicycle helmet with big old sideburns and a mustache.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Great.
He was just stopping by. He was just chill. I'm in and out for a quick prayer. They didn't even notice it.
I don't know if Tim has a way to zoom in.
The guy was backstage at the 70s porn shoot.
He literally ran in the booth and went boop 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 and ran out, and they just didn't notice him.
First example of photobombing right here. That's
there you go.
But let's break the evidence down. And by the way, Chris, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I like the approach of using science to debunk it. But let's go right to the source, right? You got this guy, Pete Bartholet. Again, viewers, let me know if I got that wrong. Who says, wow, I saw this weird thing. What do we say to the witness? At some point, we've got to start calling these witnesses out. And what do we say to them? Who wants to take this question? What do we say to the witnesses?
Well, could possibly somebody have run in, sat down, because maybe that's what the blur is, right? Maybe that blur is the light and that person moving fast enough to go there that you might not have even noticed it. Because, I mean, you got to think about it. You're taking a picture from the camera and you go in like this, right? And then down. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, hey, maybe they were behind those flowers. They came out. It's kind of like that spaceman with the little girl. The time traveler with the little girl, supposedly in the astronaut in the background.
Yeah,
and actually kind of comes out.
Yeah.
It was really like the mother and her dress was doing something or whatever. It could be something around those lines. That's what I would say. Just because somebody brings it forward and they think it's a ghost, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to be, trying to make a hoax.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they're lying.
It doesn't necessarily mean they're trying to hoax anybody. I mean, it could be a certain situation where they weren't aware of the surroundings and, you got this 1 second in time that, anything could happen before or after. And it's kind of hard to just, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, well, you're lying. I mean, to them, they might not be lying.
Well, they're not. And and you can put them on a lie detector test. It wouldn't do it. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
As reliable those are. But
I agree with Dash. The picture is of such low quality that it does almost look like a painting.
Yeah, you could see that. Yeah.
Vincent Van Ghost.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I like that.
But look, there's even a smudge on the edge of this, right? If you look, there's along the edge of that, there's a smudge or there's a blur right there, right? So it's kind of like, I mean, I think there's a default here. I think that's somebody, and I think there's a default in the film that gave that glare. And you're not paying it, even if the person sat down and you weren't really paying attention to it. You get home and you develop the film and you pick it up. You're like, hey, honey, do you remember anybody there? No, nobody was there. And now you've convinced yourself that nobody was there. We were alone in the church, but you just didn't think about the guy with the mustache and the bicycle helmet. And now because who thinks about the guy with the mustache and the bicycle helmet?
Ron Jeremy was out for a ride.
Yeah.
By 1975, these were instant cameras, and you took your film to the local,
you drop them off, right?
Yeah, you drop it off and get it developed. So who knows what could have happened? So
I mean, who knows how much time between the time it was taken to the time it was developed, and you could have just been like, oh, I don't remember anybody being there.
Exactly. You could. Who knows? These could have been filmed. These are pictures that you developed. Something happened, and they've been sitting there for a couple of years. And you're like, "Hey, remember these pictures?" And you take them out. And you're like, "Hey, wait a minute, nobody was there." That kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, and I think you guys have some great points tonight. I think that I appreciate the level of science and rational thought that we're putting into each case. But we're stumbling backwards into each time, basically telling the witness that they were wrong. So this is one disadvantage we don't have, is that we can't talk to the witness here.
Right.
So, like I say, there's some cases where, hey, we kind of get it, right? Oh, hey, I'm publishing a ghost book. Well, of course, that guy saw a ghost. He's putting a hoax together. We get it,
right.
But the 70-year-old guy visiting a church on a Tuesday morning, some of the things don't add up. And then you say, well, maybe he wasn't aware of it was a hoax. Okay, so the guy was like, again, what? How? Like, it's this elaborate process, and yet nobody knew what was going on. Let's see.
I noticed this. Aside from the researchers, though, most of these photos have been elderly people, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, tell you what, not necessarily, and we're just going to keep moving things along. This is our number 11. I can't wait to hear what you guys think about this one. The Manila photo.
Oh, that was me. No,
this one was 2003.
Mystery solved.
and I'll just set it up briefly, although this one's easy to sort of tell by looking at it. Two girls out for an evening of nightlife, having a great time, stop and ask a stranger to take their photo. And the girl gives him her phone. It's like a Nokia, if you remember that type of phone.
Yeah.
And the guy snaps like what is essentially a screen capture. And I guess that's the irony of it. They look at the photo an hour or two later. I don't know. That part doesn't matter.
Right.
But then they see this image of this sort of desperately clutching specter, right? Like, this is a spooky one. And in this case, they say, again, viewers, correct me if I'm wrong, but they say that if it's taken on a cell phone like that, it couldn't be overexposed.
Well, it could be a double exposure.
Lanning, Michael Lanning, you take this one first. What do you make of the Manila photo?
I would almost have to, in order for me to believe this, I would have to see the photo right away. Right? I would have to be there to see this. It would be, took a photo. Hey, look at this. This is crazy. Oh, well, some validity. But to me, that looks like something taken from a movie, almost. Because, the hand looks human. The arm looks human, but it looks like it kind of has like a Jim Henson face, right? The jawline, and there's like an ear.
It's the ghost of Usagi Yojimbo. Looks like a rabbit to me.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, see? So it's like it starts losing its kind of, and then there's something like if it's something on its back, because even still you see the hand and now this one, in order for me to believe it, I'd have to see, I'd have to be there to see it right away.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
the thing.
I'm afraid this is all we got tonight, brother.
Yeah, right.
You got to decide based on this.
I have to go back in time whenever that.
Hold on. Here's one. Listen, Allison. The arm of the ghost is darker than everything else. Yeah, it's a great point, right? Like it's coming forward out of the blur. If it is a double exposure, it certainly is a weird kind of one. I guess I would just add, again, You notice my things, I tend to center around the witnesses, and all the reports said that these girls were still terrified, and they still get interviewed about it, and they're terrified years later. So in this case, I would say the witness account is the scariest part. Chris, now
Yeah.
what do you make it? I know you're a skeptic on this one. Let's hear your take.
So I did some research into this one, and it's kind of weird because okay, so they're like years later, and currently still there's an app. There are apps that you can add ghosts
Right.
into your photo after they're taken, right? And this specific ghost is part of a lot of those apps.
That's not
Oh,
surprising. I can believe that. Yeah.
And there's even a picture, they show pictures or a picture of this ghost on a black background.
ah,
But
very interesting.
That a little bit that could be the chicken or the egg, though. I mean, this is probably the
Yes.
most famous modern ghost photo.
yes,
Yeah.
2003, that app didn't exist. Those types of apps didn't exist yet that we know of. So, like Tim said, chicken or egg.
But hold on. Now, I like to talk out both sides of my mouth. I'm going to take Chris's side for just a second, okay? A minute ago, I was on the other side, but I want to take Chris's side. Here's why. One of the things that we talked about backstage, which not everybody realizes, Chris sort of mentioned, these apps were really kind of new at the time. And they're so commonplace now. Everybody uses them, TikTok, Instagram filters, this kind of thing. But in 2003, they were not very well known yet, except for in Asia.
Yep.
So here you see this is coming out of the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
So he's
I was gonna say
got
that.
a point there. Yeah, he's kind of got a point there.
So
So
ridiculous looking.
Asian countries seem to be far ahead of us as far as apps go, and so it would not be out of pocket to say that this did not exist over there before we ever heard of it here in America.
So Anthony, let me ask you this question then. Would you think, knowing what you know right now about, they maybe could have had this base, it would be like a basic app on a Nokia phone, kind of like a very, I'm sure, bare bones version.
Yeah.
Does that change
seeing is believing for me, and like like Dash said, like I would have to be there to see the picture as soon as it was taken.
Yeah.
And then if I saw it and knew it wasn't an app, I'd be like, okay, I believe you. But like I said, I do believe in ghosts because I've seen stuff that most people only see in movies, but that's because I've seen it. Had someone come to me before I had witnessed anything like that and tried to convince me that they were real and showed me pictures that I wasn't present for, I would have, I don't know what you're talking about. That's Photoshop. That's a app. That's not real. But I have to say that if this is in Asian country and it's 2003, and then you said with the app being popular now, where they add, it could have been popular back then in those Asian countries. So I would have to say that's probably what you said, part of an app or something like that.
Yeah.
Just for who knows, that could have been the first photo taken with the app to promote the app.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And for all the ghosts of Asian people to be afraid of, I mean, they got the slit mouth woman, they got the ghost that comes out of the toilet, they got the ghost that has the eye coming out of its butthole, and they're terrified of this thing.
I tell you what, that is to me a pretty disturbing ghost photo there. And I will say, boy, I guess I'm going to have to take a side here. Let's vote on this one, because I will tell you what I will say. I will say that knowing what I know about the cell phones and about the apps, I think Chris is probably right with his theory. It's an early app. Maybe that's what led to it going viral in the first place.
Exactly.
It became viral because it was kind of manufactured even. In other words, it kind of veers close to the territory where somebody was making money on it.
What year did Instagram come out on as an app?
I don't 100. I can tell you it was YouTube was 05.
Yeah. YouTube was 05, so it was way later.
I think Instagram was before that, wasn't it?
Was it?
Probably. Yeah, I think so.
2010.
But
I don't know.
hold
I'm
on.
not Instagram
I hadn't
famous.
finished my statement, which is I got to make a decision, right? The other part of the decision is these two witnesses who were scared by what happened. And they saw this photo and they said, "What just happened?" And they were afraid. And that says a much different story. They didn't become famous. Like, we don't know who either of the people are in this
Right.
photo. So does that change your thinking at all? See Michael Lanning.
Not unless I talk to him.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to see. That's the only thing. Maybe if I talk to him, and then you have to give me several character witnesses for me to really, I mean, that's just.
I need the blood. I need the blood type of the ghost. I need fingerprints.
Right.
DNA sample.
They're
I
right.
want it all.
Chris, how about you? Does that change your perception, knowing that the two witnesses were supposedly frightened?
That doesn't. The only thing that makes me sort of iffy is the year, because I'm not sure. Because if you all using flip phones, like, what apps are even available for flip phones?
Yeah.
Not very many.
It would have been, I think you're right, but it would have been a very basic one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, nothing. I don't think it would have been anything that was capable of that. But,
Right.
I
The question
mean, a
is, when
flip
did the
phone's
photo?
pretty basic.
The photo was taken in 2003. When did it surface? Did it surface in 2003? I mean, is there any way to check that?
Well, I guess soon after that. Generally speaking, though, in just the little bit of research that I did, this is probably the most, they say it's the best of the modern ghost photos. By the way, I do have one other one, but I'm saving it for next week.
If you do a reverse search engine on this, like 10i, the earliest one that comes up is 2008.
Okay.
So there's that.
2008 ghost set.
Interesting.
Okay.
No, there's starting to be a lot
So
of
you're
plot
still-
holes in this picture.
Yeah, right.
Okay, we're almost to our time. And I want to hear a little bit about what kind of stuff you guys are making. But I did save one for a bonus round. And let me tell you that I have done this before. And on one of the episodes that's coming up, my daughter recently went to visit this. It was a place where Mark Twain used to live. And I guess a couple of the places had like a haunted ghost tour. And I have done one of the ones in a place called the Cashtown Inn here in Gettysburg. And it's fair to say that I am skeptical of everything. But I also have to admit that something weird happened to me. And I'm gonna wait and I'm gonna tell that story another time. But I am gonna show you our ringer here tonight, which is this Boot Hill. And this one, really what I'm talking about is these ghosts that are sighted at tourist places. And allegedly, your story here, right? It was a thing where you can go there and you can dress up in the clothing of the time period and have your photo taken. And by the way, this happened in Gettysburg also more than once, where someone took their photo home, and in the field behind them, I don't know if you guys can see on the right hand off to the shoulder of this guy dressed as a cowboy, there's like a guy crouching down in the weeds. And supposedly in this case, it was a group of like 10 or 12 people. And they all said, look, there was nobody there when we took that photo. Not to mention that his body's a little wrong as far as his legs would have to be buried in the ground. Yeah, it's like a flat spot. So let's take a quick second and talk about this one. We got about 6 minutes to cover this one. I'm going to give this to you. See Michael Lanning, the Boot Hill Ghost. What do you make of him?
Well, the man's feeding his donkey, it looks like. I mean, that's all that I can see. And in all honesty, the hat, doesn't the hat look more like a 1920s gangster than a cowboy?
It does, but it wouldn't necessarily be wrong though either.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't know. He might have been trying to take a squat, and then somebody comes up to take a picture.
That's embarrassing.
Or how do we know that one of the other guys didn't run behind there and take the picture? maybe if he was see through, I'd almost buy it. But when they're really solid like this, it's harder for me to buy it.
Okay, so that's a no from C. Michael Lanning.
Yeah,
Chris, how about you? And also try and add in there, what do you think of the phenomenon that these type of sightings tend to happen at like battlefields and gunfight places? What do you say?
Well, I have to say, this ghost is clearly looking for Malachi and the Outlanders. But as far as, I don't know, there's a hard line going across the chest there, which
yeah.
I don't know where that would be coming from. And like you said, had to be buried in the ground. It almost looks like it was added in afterwards to my eye. But if there were going to be ghosts anywhere, I would say a battlefield would have to be it.
I'd agree.
Allison might be right. That does look kind of mannequin-ish
It does look like a mannequin,
to me.
yeah.
I think, Anthony, you're going to get the final word on this one. The Boot Hill Ghost. 2 parts to this question. First, is this legit? 2, why do these things tend to happen near what are kind of tourist traps?
I mean, it looks pretty good off, right out the gate. It looks pretty good, but it does look kind of just put in there. The guy's posing, so that's kind of what's better to up your game on your posed cowboy picture than to put a ghost in the background at a place that reportedly has a lot of ghost sightings. Oh, look what I found, But I do believe that, because like I said, I'm a believer in these things. I do believe that these battlefields harbor a lot of emotion. I mean, think about the guys
right.
that died.
It goes back to our psychic theory where, you got the intense emotions perhaps summoning or imprinting onto the spot permanently.
Exactly. And, that guy could have been going out to that same spot every day at the same time to pop a squat and,
Yeah.
off at the pool. So
he had a daily
you never
routine. Well, death's not going to get in the way of that.
Nope, he's back there still taking care of business. So who knows?
Yeah, right. The gun is literally
yeah, offhand, I think it's just I think it's photoshopped in there.
Yeah, and in this case, it's not. This guy's probably the least spooky of the ones that we saw. But again, except for it was a group of witnesses, and they remember we're easy at debunking the physical aspects, but in almost every case, we gave a big "fu" to the witnesses. Now you guys are wrong.
True.
So it's like C said. Really, what we need to do is sit down with some of these witnesses and see if we could find holes in their story, right?
Yeah.
Well, I've stated in one of the UFO podcasts, the only thing I trust about people is that they lie and that they're going to seek fame.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when I talk about, I don't talk about it very often because people tend to think you're nuts or lying. But in every aspect of when I talk about things that I've seen in my house growing up and things I've seen since, I don't try to convince anybody that it's true or not. I let them make their own decisions, but I know it to be truth. The people that have been with me in those incidents know it to be truth. My wife and I watched a levitating ball. It looked like ink, almost like a symbiote from and we watched this ball levitate across the living room and through a door for 5 minutes. And it was me, her, and a friend of mine. And, she's the one who saw it first. So, like, for me to take credit for that, it's like, it's not doing me any credit. She's the one who saw it first. And she doesn't believe in any of that. So,
well, and as skeptical as I am, look, I had a shadow person crawl right up on my damn chest. So it was terrifying. So I have to interject that.
Yeah, and I have noticed just from hosting these shows that everybody has had one weird experience. Like, I mean, pretty much. I mean, not everybody's seen a UFO, but some people have seen a ghost or one. I told you, I met one fella who saw Bigfoot.
Hmm.
I got to get him on the show, and he's dead serious about it. He saw Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So, man, I really want to thank you guys for coming on and for sharing your time and knowledge on this subject. I thought you did a great job with the questions. Anthony, I was showing your website there. There's a chance we can come over and check out some of your new material.
Yeah, and where it says digital downloads, you can go and download the first and second copy of Bad Wabbit. Again, it's a post-apocalyptic redemption story about a drunken rabbit, and it's ongoing. We're going to be releasing book 3 soon, hopefully, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff. Got merch, got current events, everything we're doing. Yeah,
good for you, man.
Cool
Congratulations.
Stuff.
And this
go there
animation sequence.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. If you want to, drop the link in the comments too.
All right.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So,
yeah.
Very nice, Anthony. So I guess before we leave too, we'll go around the room and say where we can find your work. See Michael Lanning, where can we find you, buddy?
As always, check out at landingart.com. Anything nice. I do, I put up there eventually.
It's cool, man. Cool. Hey, and I got to say, man, thanks so much for helping us do this. You've been a huge help with
I love it.
And we've had some of our best performing shows. The secret ingredient. See Michael Lanning. Chris, welcome back. Always a pleasure to have you. So tell the viewers where we can find you.
You can find me on Facebook, Chris Hall, Fatboy, at on Facebook.com. I'm on DeviantArt, Fatboy73. You can also find me on Glasshouse Studios website under the colorist section there under talent. So,
yeah, thanks for coming, Chris. I really appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, I love doing this. It's a blast.
Yeah, man, good answers. I appreciate the extra thought that you put into it.
That is
Anthony,
cool.
Anthony, I'm going to give you the last word tonight. Just give a quick shout out where we can find you.
dmwcomics.com, or you can find me on Facebook at DMW Comics, and you can keep up with all the cool stuff we're doing and hoping to do.
Cool.
Oh, there's Zen. There's Zen in the comments.
Hey.
Oh, man, he made it right by the end.
Hey.
Zen, I got to get you back on here, too.
Oh, yeah. Can I say one thing, though?
Yeah, man.
When it comes to this kind of stuff, too, though, a lot of this paranormal evidence is going to be really personal. It's not going to really mean much to people outside of the ones who had the experience. Yeah. So, unless we were there for each one of these, we can't ever be sure on whether or not it's real. We can always make our speculations on debunking it. But to those people who were there and know the story as far as they were present, it's very personal evidence. And to them, it might be real. We just don't know. So I
think I'm going to. Well said, brother. Well said.
Yep.
I think we're going to give you the final word tonight. So thanks for joining us tonight in the Haunted Basement. We'll see you guys next Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be our music podcast. So make sure to swing by and see that one.
Fun.
See you guys next week.